Hello, you're listening to Nick Needs to Know, the podcast. Join me as I have open, honest and relatable conversations around careers, mindsets and life in general, and what that looks like for each one of our different guests. On this episode, I'm joined by an ex-colleague and friend of mine, Scott Jones from Doncaster, where we speak about his life and career, both past and present. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy. Jonesy, thank you.
How are we doing, mate?
Thank you for joining me today. Nice to see
No
your
worries.
face. Nice to see your face again.
Yeah, it's great. Seeing my face on radio, it's where it should belong.
Well, thanks for joining me today on my podcast. I've got you down as a special guest, but that'll probably mean nothing to anyone that's listening, but it means more to me and you than it does to anyone else, but we'll get to that later on. There is a reason behind it, and we do know each other from past employment. Yeah, so at the minute, you're currently working as a fishmonger on Doncaster Market, yes?
That's correct, yes. So currently at the Gentleman Fishmonger, which if you're on Facebook, you'll probably see his face plastered around all the time.
Cheeky little shout out there, Jonesy.
Yeah, well, you've got to get it in early.
Do you want to reel off all offers that are going at the minute as well?
Yeah, we'll get to that bit.
Yeah, so that's what you're doing currently. So obviously this podcast is about careers, lifestyles, different mindsets and things like that. And just to show that everyone has a story. So forget about what we're doing at the minute. Let's go back in time and tell me about the first time you ever remember being employed or doing something for money.
Well, I think it's the old cliche, paper rounds.
Yeah.
That's how it first started off. It were a case I wanted a bit of pocket money. It's you get to an age where you want to start being a bit more independent and stop cadging off mum and dad. You'll go around to local news agents, which I think they're few and far between now.
Yeah.
And you ask for a paper round. So that was first step. So I think I started doing an evening one, which anyone around Doncaster, when you get on a Thursday when free press comes out, it's the worst day because it's bloody heavy. And then from that it was doing a morning and an evening one. So that was fun.
Yeah. And were you still at school at that time?
Yeah. I think I were about. I think it was 12 where you're allowed to start it. I think it was anyway. But yeah, that was still at school. Obviously, a bit more extra pocket money. Wanted to do a bit, and then that sort of led, to wanting to do something else really as well, not just a paper round.
Yeah. So you stayed at school. Did you just do the, what they call it, secondary education, isn't it? I think you go up to year 11. Did you do any further education?
Yeah, I started off at the sixth form, but it wasn't quite for me. I just didn't like. I wanted to be out of school. So, and fortunately, due to being able to go to Doncaster College at the time, went on and did a sports science course, which has really helped me in my current job. So, but that was a good 2 years because you learn different stuff as well, meet new people, more relaxed atmosphere, or I would say a more adult atmosphere rather than, when you're in a school environment, still in uniform.
Yeah. While you were doing that, did you have a career in mind after that stint at sixth form?
I did, because I was looking at the sports science side of things. I've always had a massive interest in sport. It's been a massive part of my life. And I was hoping that would sort of come into, maybe working into physiotherapy, other options, sports science, like the psychology side of it, because I really enjoyed that part of the course. But it just didn't, or the coaching even. There were I used to love coaching, and and it just didn't work out. I didn't find anything that sort of fit really. So I was sort of plodding around in dark.
Yeah.
Didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. I always thought it'd be something in sport, but obviously, as we'll probably go into, it's gone the opposite way.
Yeah. So off the back of that, then you've left sixth form.
Yeah.
And then your first full-time job was
working with fish. Well, yeah, but that started a long time when I was 13. Because as much as I was doing the paper round, this is where the fish came into it. I started as a Saturday lad on Doncaster Market. You're going on a Saturday, do all crap jobs basically, washing up fish trays, doing a bit of serving, and then washing the stall down at the end of the day. But that sort of led me to a bit of a passion. And to be honest, I was forced into it. My dad made me do it. And then the guy who employed me, who's still my employer, he didn't even want me. So I first started, he said I only did it as a favour, and he still reminds me of that to this day. It's been 20 odd years since.
So you had two paper rounds, and your dad's looked at you and thought, "That's not enough, son. You need to do more work."
He wasn't bored. That's what he wanted, even at 13. So very, very frivolous, my dad.
Yeah. So obviously that started when you were 13. Then as a Saturday lad, leaving college. At college, were you still a Saturday lad?
No. So kind of. Yeah. So I kept being a Saturday lad throughout secondary school, and just before, obviously, I went to college. Try and think now. Go think back. So I was a very keen rugby player. So I had to leave the fish because I signed on a scholarship first with Hull FC. I think I was 15 at the time, and then from that signed my first contract in their academy system. But then I had to pack in the fish for a time because our games were on a Saturday, and obviously I couldn't do both. But even when I wasn't playing, I'd still go back. So we'd be in contact. So by this time, he actually did want me to stay. Yeah. So he, I must have won him round. But yeah, so it was that sort of took precedent then for a number of years were the rugby side of things, but I kept going back to the fish. So to be honest, I was constantly busy. I don't know where I fit everything in.
So your rugby was at a professional level?
Yeah,
right?
So that's right. So I was quite fortunate to have 2 years with Hull FC, and absolutely loved it. Met some fantastic people, players who are still now ripping it up in the Super League. Some have been international players. One lad went over to Australia and played, and still playing in the Australian comp as well. So, it's great to say you've played with them people. Sometimes you do look at it and think, bloody hell, that could have been me.
Yeah.
So,
and is there a particular reason why it wasn't you?
So further down the line, I signed my first ever first team contract. So when I was 17, I signed for Doncaster, which is over here, and it were amazing for myself because we had a man called Elliot Hanley who came in as the head coach. And for anybody who knows rugby, he's basically like the Pele of rugby league, an absolute legend of the game. So I was just in awe. And the first year, I probably excelled all expectations for myself. So I didn't expect to play much first team rugby because obviously only 17 years old. And I probably played, probably up to 15 to 20 games that season. And also managed to play on Sky. That year we were the first team to get to what was called the Northern Rail Cup final. We beat Batley in the semi-final, which they were in the division above, and then the final then was over in Blackpool, and it just an amazing experience being a part of that, playing in front of thousands of people on telly. I won't go into the result because that don't matter.
You got beat then.
we got hammered. Only team to bloody get beat. I don't know if it was. No, we didn't. We got beat 60-0.
Wow.
Yeah, but they were proper. They were a Super League team. You know, they had international players. You know, it was, and I think we just got caught in headlights that day. I think I don't know what happened, but it was good to be a part of it. And then where I probably started making wrong choices was the season after. So the club went into a bit of turmoil, and probably personally I thought I was better than what I was, but what I forgot was how young I was, and that I still had a lot of time to learn. And I dare say I probably developed a bit of a poor attitude into, you know, whereas the season before, if I want training, I'd be doing extras. I'd be solely focused, where that sort of went on the back burner, which probably led to me, you know, probably poor performances or, you know, picking up little crappy injuries that kept you out of the game. It's the start of the season. It was great, but, you know, it's all about having the right attitude and to be a top professional, and probably why the people I played with before have stayed at the top of the game is that attitude, and it's something I look back on now and use it into my current work, because you've got to have the right attitude in anything, and you've got to be disciplined in what you do if you want to be successful, basically.
Yeah. So you've turned that experience into a bit of a learning experience, haven't you?
Yeah, cause, you know, and it always, you get a foot down to earth when, especially when I'm watching games with my dad, and he just taps me on the shoulder and says, "Do you remember when you used to play with him?" Yeah, cheers. So it does it. So that's a constant reminder.
Yeah.
But even from that, you know, even when it like the off season, I'd still go back working at fish market.
Yeah. There's obviously been some draw to that, then. There's obviously been a bit of a passion for that sort of Saturday job that you had at the time.
And I think it was, I don't know, I think it was probably, apart from rugby in a way, it was the only thing I was good at. I actually had a skill, you know, because it's learning to fill it and things like that. It's not a common thing anymore.
No.
And working in a public environment, dealing with people, and it brings out a confidence in you. When I first started, I was a very shy lad. You know, I wouldn't say boo to a goose. I'd be very introvert. And then at the end of it, I think everyone got fed up of hearing me.
Yeah, it's a very people facing sort of role, isn't it, on a market? And you're dealing with different characters from second to second, I suppose, aren't you?
That's it. And you treat each person individually, because not everyone has a different need. Everyone wants something different.
Yeah.
And little things like remembering people's names, or, you know, or just saying something that will make them smile. You know, and that to me, especially when you're selling, makes people want to come back and see you. And I learned that off Martin, my boss, because he was great at it.
Yeah.
You know, just that personal touch you give to people.
So just back onto your rugby, did that come to a clean end, or was it a gradual end? And then did your full-time work take over from rugby?
Yeah, so that second year at Donny, the club were going into administration. So nobody was not sure what the following year what was going to happen. We all took pay cuts to start with. And then everyone started looking for different options. So I did try and switch codes. I went to Doncaster Knights, the rugby union team. Spent a few months with them. Played one game against Rotherham for the second team, just to And it was good, the training and everything. I really enjoyed it. Just I wasn't suited to rugby union. As much as it's same shape ball, same size pitch, they are two different games. And I think some people are suited for both. I don't think I was.
Mm.
So from that, I then went to Sheffield Eagles in their under, I think it was either the reserve team and I just sort of lost that love for the game. I was unfit. I remember turning up for my first session and they were doing fitness tests. And one of my old coaches who worked Donny with me sort of looked at me as if to say, what on earth have you done?
Mm.
So, and I had a couple of years there just trying to find the love again for it, which I sort of lost. And then from that, just thought, right, go back to my roots, went back to my amateur club and started to get it again, I think. And then it did come to an abrupt end then, because unfortunately I had a nasty knee injury.
Right.
Which sort of pretty much put an end to everything, really. But I should have listened to my better half, Zoe, because she actually rung me to playing in an evening, and it had been raining.
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, you're not going to be playing tonight, are you?" Why? She said, "Well, it's been raining." I said, "It's not bloody tennis." So, next phone call she got, I went back of an ambulance. So,
yeah. Did you know at the time it was a career ender?
No, I knew it hurt. It was, so I just knackered my knee. I mean, it's one of them things, it's just going to be reoccurring. So, and it was that time I thought, right, I've got a family, got to start, I started working full time at the fish market at this point, and it meant 6 weeks, 8 weeks, I couldn't move, I was on crutches, I couldn't do anything. And it was that point I thought, right, well, I'll make a decision now.
Mm.
And now I can go back to rugby and just do it as a leisure, nothing serious. Hopefully in a couple of years when I'm a little bit old enough, there's a Masters sort of league which people up to 86 can play. And my dad's still playing.
Yeah.
He's got 2 false hips, but you all got different colour shorts. So it'd be great to be able to do that and play with my dad.
Yeah.
So that's. So I've been training now for 2 years.
Yeah. Looking forward to a bit of payback on your dad, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So just start shouting at him if he's done out wrong.
Remember them 6 paper rounds you made me do?
Yeah. He'll get a paper in the back of his head.
So rugby is now done. We're finished with that. You're full time now at the fish market.
Yeah.
How long did that last for?
So that lasted quite a number of years. And I worked at the market, I dare say, up until about 2012. And I absolutely loved the market, but you sort of start fancying a change.
Mm.
And I had an opportunity. A friend of mine who worked on the market helped a couple open up a Fishmongers in Bawtry. And then a year later, they were looking at opening another one in another village. So Brad approached me and said, do you fancy doing it? And it were a really good opportunity. So obviously I had a difficult conversation with Martin, my boss, about that, I fancy doing it, fancy that new experience. It were a bit more money. Yeah. Obviously, you got a family to support. So I thought I'd give it a go, and I absolutely loved it. I loved the shop environment, working in a village, because there's even more personal touch there.
Yeah.
Because people have like shopping habits. It's a part of their daily life. And that lasted a year, and then that came to an abrupt end. The owners had one idea about what was happening, and I basically said, right, that's it, I'm done. So which,
Did you have
then I ended
to?
up.
Was that because of some ideas you had? Were there conflicting?
It was. Well, basically, they wanted me to take a massive pay cut. As I said, they didn't think the shop were doing very well. Which obviously, when I'm in there, I knew what it were doing, and I didn't agree with it as such. And at this point, I just got an house, and then it came out of nowhere. There were like no build up. There were no like, come on, we need to be a bit busier. We need to pick it up a bit. There were nothing. So it was like a bombshell. And I always remember the day it happened, because I was just sat there in shock. And I says, I'm just going to have to go home. And I went home and spoke with Zoe. And she looked at me. And I was that much in shock. I got home and I had 3 shots of Jack Daniels, which is something I don't do. And I was just shaking. I just didn't understand what was happening at that time. So, so then we said, made a decision, right, no, we can't, we're not doing that. So, and then, fortunately, it led to another opportunity, which really, which I absolutely loved. It was a place in Chesterfield, working for a butcher. But what he was doing was setting up a brand new shop opposite his old place in the town centre, and it was going to have a fish counter in there, which obviously I was going to do for him. It had a cafe and everything, and I absolutely loved it. The only issue was the travelling. So at that time, the M1 were having all the roadworks and doing a 12-hour shift, and then sometimes 2 hours commute home. We just had was youngest at that point as well. So I was missing out on some valuable family time and made a difficult decision to leave that place.
Yeah.
You know, because it's family time. At that point, it meant everything.
So that was the driving factor for you to finish at that place, and was
the family
time.
Yeah, and that were it. And it was a shame, because I learned so much. I learned different ways of how you can present a product. So, like the butchers, how they put the winder in, some of the stuff just looked amazing. If Martin's listening, it was where I developed my love for curly kale on a fish counter. So he absolutely hates it, but it makes the fish look amazing. So, but yeah, like I remember one day I think we had a newspaper coming in, so we had all the displays looked amazing. And one of the butchers made me a penguin out of an aubergine and stuck it in my counter, which I've never seen anything like it before in my life, but it were amazing. It was like Pingu.
Yeah, some skill.
Yeah, and it was just the travelling, you know, and people who have long distance jobs, I take my hat off to them.
Yeah,
because it's no fun. So all it takes is an accident and your day's knackered, isn't it?
So you've finished in Chesterfield.
Yeah.
That's led on to
coming back to the market.
Back to the Doncaster market.
So again, I spoke to Martin, let him know what was happening. He offered me to come back, which I think you're quite grateful. So came back, obviously enjoying being back on the market, and tried to sort of implement a few things that I'd learned, you know, by doing a few easy options for fish. Because what I found in Chesterfield, which, you know, people in Doncaster forget how fortunate they are to have a fish market and the quality of fish we have. Because in Chesterfield, nobody really bought fresh fish. No one really saw fresh fish. And it were a real eye-opener. Of you've got to approach it in a different way, and try and do something that makes it easier for the customer. So even it like just flavoured fish, putting a. So I tried it, but we had a bit of a different in opinion there. So he wanted to stay sort of quite traditional fishmonger. Tried introducing curly kale, and that didn't last long. So I think he ended up in bin. A bit of social media as well. That's when we first started getting how social media could work in ways as well.
Yeah.
This was before it all really took off. And so I was there probably another year or two maybe. And because I wanted to try and move in a different direction, tried to push certain things, it led to other options. So probably this is where start leading close to where me and you first met.
Yeah.
I was actually talking to a good friend of mine, and we went out for a meal, and he'd recently started working in the prison service.
Yeah.
So, and he mentioned it to me. Thought, why not? Applied, did everything, but obviously at that point recruitment took a long time, and I was ready to sort of just leave the market and just sort of move on to something different. So in between that, I ended up working at DRI, the hospital, for a bit as a porter.
Right.
And so that were only for a short period. It was just sort of like a bit of a stopgap up until training started, until you got your date to start, really. And also getting used to being paid on a monthly basis rather than a weekly. So that is a massive thing, really.
Yeah.
Trying to sort your finances out from going weekly to monthly.
Yeah, it is. It is a big shock when that happens, isn't it? When you've
Yeah, just a bit.
You get used to living week by week, and then all of a sudden you've got a massive wage once a month.
Yeah.
And you've got to stop yourself from spending it all in one go.
You got to make it last. You get to the last few days of you're basically raided freezer and cupboard just to make a meal up.
Yeah. So obviously now you've done your porter job, this is where you move on to your prison officer work. And just before we go any further, this is why I said you're classed as a special guest to me, because it is a real intense environment, that environment, isn't it? And you're working shoulder to shoulder, day in, day out. And some of these people that you work with can become real close friends.
Yeah.
So talk me through when you first started. You've done your training, you've got in, you walked through them gates for the first time. What was that like for you?
Horrible.
Yeah.
You can spot new staff and the prisoners, they can see it from a mile off, and in your there's no amount of training that you can do that prepares you for that first time you unlock a landing where you don't know where anyone lives, you don't know what key to use. Well, you do, but when you're doing it for the first time, you just don't know. It's the noise hits you, the smells, different smells, and it was just a very, I think it took me a good, probably until my first bit of annual leave I had, which I probably were at job probably 6 to 7 weeks. Didn't know what I was doing, still trying to get to grips with it, and then I had a week off, and then you sort of came back, and you half forgot you were a new member of staff.
Yeah.
And you sort of get a bit of confidence, you start to relax a little bit. But yeah, I think the first stint was mental.
Yeah.
You used to go home and you couldn't switch off. Yeah. And it took a long time probably up until that first bit of break I had, to actually sort of get to grips with it and start pushing on.
And that's the thing about switching off. It's impossible, isn't it? You see that much stuff. I mean, the stuff. The way I try and explain it now is we've probably seen more stuff in that period of time than most people would ever see in a lifetime.
Yeah.
And you're seeing stuff like that regularly on a daily basis. So What did you do eventually to switch off? How did you get around that?
I think it's your mindset, and you get told when you first start and you do your training, leave everything at the gate. And once you sort of get your way to think about it, it's what as soon as you walk out of that gate, you've got to sort of take a big deep breath. Right, that's gone. So and obviously try not to overthink about it. But yeah, it was a case of right, you're out of them gates now. You know, you're a civilian now. You're back in the real world. You do your real world things. Obviously, certain things you don't switch off about. It's like when you're out in public, you're always on guard. You almost don't trust anybody, which had a massive impact later on in my career there, which probably led to why I left in the end. But yeah, it's a case of managing that. What's happened in that day, leave it at the gate.
And what sort of things did you see that stayed with you in that job?
I think the one that sticks out the most was we had an incident where a lad had what were had some spice, which were obviously synthetic cannabinoid that were rife in the prison service. Probably still is, to be honest. And he'd obviously overdosed on it, and he were gone, and we were all working on him, CPR and everything. We had paramedic, we were all doing it, we were all working on him. We managed to get him back. Sadly, obviously, he'd been out for too long. Obviously, he'd lost all brain function, and sadly did die a few days later. But it's just that what you see, you think people might think they're prisoners, but it is somebody. It's a human person, and when you're in that, you're there to try and save a life at the end of the day. And we were quite chuffed we managed to get him back, albeit sadly he did pass. But we did the job there that we needed to do. But that's one that does sort of stick in my mind. Obviously a lot of bizarre things that stuck in my mind as well. So, but it's a strange place. I know when I did some detached duty in young offenders, high security young offenders in Aylesbury, and that place was just crazy.
Yeah, I remember you coming back from that, talking about that.
Oh, it was generally the first week I was there. I remember talking to Zoe on the way home, and I said to her, I don't think I'm going back. So I was genuinely scared.
Yeah.
With the staff that are around you and what these lads are capable, and they've got no fear. And bearing in mind, they're only 18 to 21 year olds. I remember at first door I opened, and this lad came out, and he looked older than me. He was about 6 foot odd, filled door. I went, no way, you're 18.
Yeah.
So it was just bizarre.
There's
Absolutely bizarre.
A lot of testosterone flying about at that age, isn't there? And
just
people trying to find a place on ladder, sort of thing.
Yeah, and it was the first time I'd sort of experienced a bit of gang culture.
Yeah.
We got a bit at our place, but nowhere near on the scale of what was happening there.
Yeah.
It were quite surreal.
You obviously started there as an officer.
Yeah.
When I finished, before I finished, you were an SO, supervising officer.
Yeah.
How did that come about, and how did you get to a position where you wanted promotion?
I think obviously I started off working on landings on the wing. Felt like I've done a few years on there. Quite a strong member of the team, and then I managed to. Before that, I managed to start working in safe custody, which then you get to see a different side of prison life. So you're working on protecting the vulnerable and getting basically the bullies, the perpetrators, and sort of working to eradicate that. And then obviously that led to working in the segregation unit quite a bit. And then I think I was talking to my line manager at the time, and they informed me that there were a position coming up in the segregation for supervising officer. At that time, I would probably, if you went back 15 years or even 10 years, somebody who's been in the job 3 years, you'd have never heard of them going for that type of role. Normally, you have to have had 10 years service, but at 3 years service, you're practically a long-serving member with the amount of staff that left. So I applied. I took on board what the line manager said. Did a bit of work, finding stuff out about how it worked and what would the job would entail. And eventually I was successful, which I was absolutely over the moon. And we had a really good team. We had a good, strong team down there. And it probably the most settled we had that area for quite some time.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it. Being able to sort of lead as well. From a sporting background, you're always wanting to sort of be a leader, but at the same time be able to work as a team.
Yeah.
It's making sure there's no weak link. And it was, and I enjoyed it. But the only thing from that led to the not switching off bit. So it made it difficult sometimes because there's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of computer-based stuff. And you start thinking when you're home, have I done this? Is this signed? Have I made sure this is all filled out? Because if you haven't, and there's an incident, and you can end yourself in some really serious trouble.
Yeah.
Everything's a legal binding document, what you're signing, and
a lot more responsibility in that position.
Yeah, and it were a case of just not being able to switch, and then that sort of were affecting home life a bit. Because I wasn't invested in the home life. I was probably a bit. I don't know. I started turning into somebody I didn't like.
Yeah.
Is probably and it was affecting how I was with my children, with my partner, and it I didn't like it. And it was starting to get to that point where I knew it was time to sort of think about it. And it was quite a sudden decision I made, really. It took a lot of people by surprise because I think I was applying for another promotion at this point as well.
Yeah.
So it was a difficult period. But one now, I'm glad I made.
So you're saying when you were looking back, obviously, you knew it were affecting your personal life and the time you spent with your children and stuff like that. Was that something that you come to your fruition, or was it something that was brought up to you? Did your partner say to you, look, Scott, you've changed, you need to do something about this, or was it you that made that decision? It
obviously at first, people do say, and you do notice a little change, and obviously my partner noticed the change and were telling me, but it wasn't until there was one day I realised myself, and I just sort of thought, who are you? This ain't you. You're not happy, and I wasn't happy. I want my bright, cheery self.
Yeah.
For anybody who does know me, I'm quite a jovial person, up for a laugh, and I got to a point where I was not nice to be around. I didn't enjoy my own company.
Yeah.
So, and God knows what other people would have felt.
See, that's quite a strong statement to make, isn't it? You don't enjoy your own company.
Yeah, and you do, and I got into a bit of a dark spot, and luckily got myself to a point where I felt like me again. And the biggest thing was get rid of dead weight, which was the job.
Yeah.
And think about what makes you happy. And the funniest thing actually was the conversation that me and Zoe had one night about finding that happiness again. And we spoke about working with fish. And then I think that was a Friday. And then on a Saturday, it just so happened we just went into the market to want to buy some fish. And first thing I saw was Martin just smiling at me like a Cheshire cat. Because little did I know at that point, there was a conversation going off at his home about trying to get me back.
Wow.
So, yeah, it just spiraled from that, really. So, and then from that moment, and all he said to me was, "You fancy a chat?"
Mm.
And it was there were a light bulb moment, and a weight lifted. And it felt great. It felt like,
so the
someone's coming.
The timings of that couldn't have been any more perfect, really, could they?
No. And this was at the point where COVID, we're in the COVID period, and what my boss had done during COVID that really took the social media stage by storm and started expanding. They had big ideas, but to allow those ideas into fruition, Martin kept saying, "Well, we need somebody like Scott. We need somebody like Scott." And then his partner turned around and said, "Well, just ask him to come back.
Yeah.
Ask him." And it will literally, everything aligned at the right time. And then we had a conversation, spoke about what they were doing and what they were doing, the ideas they had going forward, and it had me hooked. So, and that was that.
No pun intended.
No. Yeah, I didn't even try and place that one in either.
So obviously that's, in your mind, that's made that a lot easier, because had you officially made that decision to leave the prison service before this chat with Martin, or was it something that was playing on your mind?
Sort of playing on the mind, but then when me and Zoe went and had the conversation with Martin and Sarah, straight away, we walked away. I was smiling, she was smiling. The next day, my notice went in.
Yeah.
And that were it. And it was literally, I was counting the days down until that were it. And I think I finished, did I finish on the Friday or the Saturday? One of them. And then Monday, I was there. I had my brand spanking new fish boots, my big wellies. Couldn't wait to get into them. Had everything ready. And it was. I walked in on a Monday morning, and I had the biggest smile on my face. Yeah. And it were like, I think at this point, probably not been working properly with fish, maybe for about 4, 5, maybe 5, 6 years probably. So, and it. The old cliche of getting back on bike, like you've never been off it. And it was same, and some of the lads were there, they're like, I started filleting as though I'd never been away. And they were like looking as if say, when was the last time you did this?
Yeah.
So, and straight out, we're happy.
Yeah.
I know it sounds daft, but somebody being happy, getting covered in fish crap, filleting, and smiling, and absolutely loving it. So it was great, and it was a really good time. It was very happy.
And that's obviously ties nicely into what you're doing now, because you're still there at the same place.
Yeah, well, like now, so the expansion sort of took a lot longer than what initially should have happened, obviously, because we had another lockdown with COVID. But we've got another establishment, a garden centre, Walker's Nurseries, where in there we've got a fish counter, a fish and seafood counter alongside a butcher. So the plan was for me to come and manage that area, basically. So, and that's what I'm doing now. And it's we've got the market, which is going really well. And then obviously now I've got this. I'm running the place up there, but it's also, excuse me, because I've had that experience working inside a shop, working alongside butchers in the previous two jobs. It fits in so well, and I love that environment. As much as I love the market, it just suits me, and I'm quite lucky that they've allowed me to put my own stamp on it. Not make it my own as such, but make it my own, and put a few ideas in there myself, and it is paying off. It's such a busy place.
They give you a little bit of trust, don't they?
Yeah, and that was one of the things that me and Martin have always had. We've had a good trust with each other, which probably led to me in wanting me to come back. It's because in these jobs, you've got to have a big amount of trust. There's a lot of cash changing hands. You've got a lot of money in a product, that's basically paying wages, so you've got to have a trust in somebody that can perform really. And luckily, we've both got that with each other.
Future-wise, what does that look like for Scott?
Fishy. No, at the minute, couldn't be very happy, any happier. Everything's, work-wise, happy. Kids are, happy in school. Home life's good. My Mrs. Zoe, she's working and doing extremely well, progressing in her own work, which is just making everything, everything look rosy, and there's no negativity as such.
Yeah.
Everything's all, positive, and that's what I like. I like that side of things.
And what does Scott do on his non-working days? What do you do to switch off? What do you do to treat yourself now and again?
On a very rare occasion, yesterday being one of them, I tell everybody that I'm on strike, and I do nothing except if the weather's nice, like yesterday, spend a lot of time in my hammock. Cooking, that's what a big passion, so I'll switch off and I'll take my iPad or whatever and do some cooking, watch something while I'm doing that. To be honest, my Mondays, which is my main sort of day off with nobody, I just spend cleaning.
Yeah.
I do, yeah. Get everything ship shape, get all washing done, get my marigolds on, and I do actually enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's quite therapeutic.
Yeah.
So I do enjoy that.
So before we go into the quick fire questions, Scott, I'm going to ask you to think of one thing that not many people know about you. Maybe an interesting fact or a hidden talent.
Hidden talent. The secret passion for line dancing, I say. Probably.
Line dancing?
Yeah. Yeah.
That is secret because I don't even know about that.
I love to throw a line dance in there, and luckily the mother-in-law, she used to be a tutor. Right. So, and when we've all had a few too many beers on the night time, the old heel flick will come out.
Brilliant. Right.
Yeah.
It's time for quick fire questions. Right, Jonesy, quick fire questions, mate. There's only 5. Nice and easy. Question number 1. Favourite holiday memory from your childhood?
Oh, childhood, probably going away caravan with mum and dad to Brid.
Caravan inbred. Nice.
Yeah.
Question 2. Are you more of a thinker or a doer?
Doer, because I don't think about it.
You just do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Number 3. What never fails to make you laugh?
Films, like comedy films, especially if I've watched them 100 times.
Yeah. Mine's Royal Family.
Royal Family, yeah.
I can watch them episodes day in, day out, and every time it hits me like it's first time I've heard it.
Yeah. And funny enough, we've been watching a bit of TV lately, and it's not something I do a lot of. And shows that I've seen before, and like you say, they're still Phoenix Nights.
Yeah,
that
as well.
Absolute gem.
Yeah.
And I think probably rightly so. They never did any more, because I don't think you could do a comedy like that now.
No.
I don't think people would get it. But you can watch that whenever, and it does it. It's because I'd say we're a similar age, but you're a little bit older than me.
All right.
But we sort of lived through them times where Working Men's Club had that scene.
Yeah, definitely.
Where now you're just lucky to have a Working Men's Club, and they're just brilliant.
It wouldn't be as relatable nowadays, would it?
No.
Was to us.
A bit like In-Betweeners.
Yeah.
It's schools aren't like that anymore. They just expel everybody. Just not for wearing right shoes. That's another story.
Okay, then question 4. Do you think you could win a game show?
Yeah.
Which one?
One that I'll win. Gladiators.
Gladiators. All right.
That's a game show.
Well, yeah, it used to be, yeah.
Yeah, it's back on. They're filming.
Is it?
Yeah, they're filming in Sheffield.
I bet Jet don't look as nice as she did when we were younger.
No, she's more like Jet Wash.
And finally, question 5. What was the last thing one of your kids did that annoyed you?
Probably this morning, not waking up.
Yeah.
For school, yeah.
Does that really annoy you?
Yeah, just wake up. It might be a teenager, and it's hard to do. But just wake up. Don't just keep saying yeah. It's really
turning over.
You're getting me bang at it now. I'm on it again. It annoys me. Right, when he gets home, he's grounded.
You can blame Nick for this.
Yeah. Get straight upstairs. Why? Well, Nick reminded me that he didn't wake up.
No, listen, Scott, that's brilliant, mate. I appreciate you taking the time to join me today and talk about your career, past and present. It's been lovely to hear from you and see your face from my point of view.
Yeah.
Thanks again, and you take care, Scott. Have a nice day.
And you, mate. Cheers for having me, mate.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to hit that follow button and join me next time for more chats on Nick Needs to Know.